All right, guys, so I am happy to announce this morning that the Republicans have made themselves useful for once, right, against the Biden administration, as the Senate has passed a resolution to defund/repeal Biden's vaccine mandate. Now, Biden's vaccine mandate has been struggling, right? He's been struggling to actually get it implemented. As we all know, I mean, this obviously overreach, right? In constitutional issues, which is being backed up by the fact that the private sector version of it that applies to employers with more than 100 employees, that was halted in federal appeals court last month, okay? And just recently, I believe a few days ago, the version of it that applies to federal contractors was also halted, right? So this ain't really holding up too well in court, okay, for Biden, right? And now with the Republicans basically leading an effort through legislator to repeal Biden's vaccine mandate, it ain't really looking good for Biden in regards to his ambitions to implement this mandate, right? Not really looking all that good. So let's actually take a listen at Mitch talk about this in Congress.
President Biden's absurd private sector vaccine mandate is blatant overreach. It is illegal. The administration has already lost in federal court and had it blocked. Washington Democrats have lashed themselves to a mast that is very simple. Unvaccinated people should be fired. That's what they want. They don't trust individuals, families, doctors, employers, and customers to sort things out for themselves. They want every worker at a medium-sized business and up to either get this shot or get fired by President Biden. And buried in the illegal mandate is a call to explore whether it should expand to all businesses. This is not how things work in our country, period.
Yeah, so that's Mitch railing against Biden's vaccine mandate, basically framing it as if, you know, hey, he's basically telling workers, get the shot or get fired, right? Which, in my opinion, you know, I don't know who in the world could actually agree with that, right? You got to get this shot or you lose your job and your livelihood. Kind of crazy. But let me say this about Mitch real quick, right? Because I think people need to understand. The two judges, right, that has ruled on Biden's vaccine mandate in order to halt it for federal contractors and private businesses with over 100 employees, they were appointed by Trump, okay? But Mitch McConnell is really the dude that did the work to make that happen, to get those conservative judges in place, right? And this is something he's been doing ever since the Obama administration by basically blocking Obama from nominating his own judges, leaving so many seats open for Trump to appoint all these conservative judges to the court. And now you're kind of seeing that play out, and you're seeing the results of all the work that Mitch McConnell has put in over the years to make that happen in the form of this right here when it comes to his mandate. And you're also kind of seeing that with the whole abortion thing as well, too. So I know a lot of conservatives hate Mitch, and I'm not necessarily a fan of Mitch, okay? Especially I'm not a fan of him as a person. But I think he deserves credit, right? In regards to him orchestrating putting all these conservative judges on the court, something that he's been working on since the Obama administration. And that, in my opinion, is probably almost, if not just as important as who's president, right? It really is, okay? And that's going to have a really long-lasting effect on this country going forward into the future. And that may be Mitch's greatest legacy. And he does not get enough credit from the conservative movement for him orchestrating those things, right? So I just want to say that about Mitch. I know a lot of people don't like him because he's super corrupt, and I agree with you. He is very corrupt, but the dude is hella smart, right? He is. But let's read about the Republicans actually doing something useful. Senate Republicans successfully forced a vote on a resolution aimed at nullifying the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for large employers in a 52-48 vote. While the measure is not expected to see movement in a Democrat-controlled lower chamber, two Democratic lawmakers, Senator Jon Tester of Montana and Joe Manchin of West Virginia, joined GOP lawmakers in voting for the measure. All right, so this article is saying that, it might not see that much movement in the Democrat-controlled House. However, I mean, listen, you never know. All it needs is just a simple majority. And who knows? I mean, I'm assuming that all Republicans will probably vote for it, right? And there could be some Democrats who are for districts that are more red, right? That are like, you know what? Maybe I might actually vote for this to repeal this because my district is more moderate. It could be more red. That could be a possibility, right? I mean, we saw Joe Manchin and Jon Tester get on board. Okay, Manchin basically is branded himself as a moderate. I mean, borderline Republican at this point. Okay, and he voted for it. And this guy, Jon Tester, I don't know all that much about him, but I can imagine that Montana is not all that much of a blue state. It can't be that blue, right? So, I mean, look, here's the thing. There's a chance, right? There is a chance, but there's more to this, okay? Let's read here. Under the mandate, which is expected to take hold January 4th, has been halted by the courts. Employers with more than 100 employees will be required to have employees vaccinated or mandatory weekly testing for COVID-19. Republicans, led by Senator Mike Braun, used the Congressional Review Act, a tool that allows the minority to force a vote on a measure to overturn a federal rule. Again, GOP finally using the tools at their disposal to actually take some real action here, right? Yeah, you got to get credit where credit is due. GOP lawmakers in both chambers have slammed the mandate, arguing that it is an executive overreach and unconstitutional, adding they believe it is a slippery slope towards other forms of federal mandates. I mean, it basically is, right? And, after this whole saga when it comes to the federal vaccine mandate and stuff like that, I never want to hear anything from the Democrats about fascism ever again, right? Or authoritarianism. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, okay? Because depending on how Biden actually handles this, depending on how it goes, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, it's going to really show how much of an authoritarian this guy actually is, right? This really is going to push the limits of the Democrats' authoritarianism, right? Because he's facing opposition from legislators now, and he's facing oppositions from court, okay? So let's read a little bit more here. Imagine the next time it happens when you're on the wrong side of whatever the merits of the case would be, Braun said at a press conference on Wednesday. Quote, "That's why for me it was easy to do. We quickly got all Republicans on board. It's bipartisan. I would say this, and I want to hear from other senators. I hope members in the House, Democrats in places, check with your constituents and make sure they're not a part of the 86% of Americans that say when you put it in these terms, either you get it or you lose your job. You're on the wrong side of the issue." Yeah, so it's funny how he frames that, right? And I can't really find out exactly where he got that number from, because a lot of these surveys, if you look up American support for Biden's vaccine mandate, I mean, most of the articles that you're going to get, most of the data that you're going to get seems to suggest that the American people do support the federal mandate. However, again, it depends on how you actually ask the question, right? If you frame the question as, well, do you support the mandate? People might say yes. But if you frame the question as, do you agree with being forced to take a vaccine, right, or losing your job? I think a lot of people might take a step back and say, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that, right? The White House has indicated that President Biden will veto the measure in the unlikely chance that it passes the House. So, yeah, this is where it gets interesting, because if it does pass the House, Biden is basically saying that they're going to veto it. If you veto it, then it goes back to the Senate and the House, in which it now needs a 2/3 majority in order to pass in the House and the Senate. And, in that scenario, I don't really see that happening, right? I don't see 2/3 of the House and the Senate overriding Biden's veto on that. I just don't. I mean, there's just too many Democrats that support it, right? But with that being said, considering what's going on in the courts, for Biden to veto this bill, I think will be a really bad look, right? And I think that will really, really show that this man is literally an authoritarian. He does not care about what Congress says, and he does not care about what the courts say, because he's still trying to push something that has been struck down in courts and also has been passed by Congress. So again, when you want to start talking about fascism and authoritarianism, if Biden vetoes this bill, I don't want to hear anything about that, right? I never want to hear anything about fascism come out of anybody's mouth on the left whatsoever, ever again, right? We certainly hope the Senate Congress will stand up to the anti-vaccine and testing crowd, and we're going to work to implement these. If it comes to the president's desk, he'll veto it, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters on Tuesday. Guys, I really don't like Jen Psaki. Right? I really don't like Jen Psaki. First of all, nobody's anti-vax, right? Just because you're anti-mandate doesn't mean you're anti-vax. There are a lot of people that are anti-mandate that are pro-vax. They're like, oh, no, you should get the vaccine and, you should be vaccinated in general. But hey, I'm not about forcing people to do it. A whole lot of people are like that, right? And I don't think there's anybody that's against testing, right? I haven't heard anybody be like, oh, no, we shouldn't be testing people, okay? But again, this is the Democrats. If you don't agree with me, then you're anti-mandate, you're anti-vaxxer, and you don't like testing, and you're racist, and you might be a white supremacist. We can't forget to throw that in there. That's the Democrats. Quote, we got a new variant and cases are rising. President's been clear. We'll use every tool to protect the American people, and we hope others will join us in that effort. Again, depending on how Biden handles this, right, these L's that he's taking when it comes to this vaccine mandate, it's going to tell us a whole lot about who he is, right? We had a hint of it when it came to the whole eviction moratorium, right? When Biden decided to keep it in place despite the fact that the Supreme Court was just like, no. Right, and Biden was just like, I don't care. I'm going to do it because the far leftists, people like Cori Bush and AOC told me to. Right, that's literally what happened. I'm just going to ignore the courts. So in a situation like this, again, Biden could try to veto this bill if it passes the House, right, and then sending it back down to Congress, in which I doubt that they will be able to get 2/3 vote to be able to override Biden's veto in both the House and the Senate. Or what he could do when it comes to the court striking it down, if he continues to take an L in court on this, he could just ignore it and be like, no, you got to do it anyways, right? That is something that I wouldn't be surprised if he does, right? Because again, this guy has shown us time and time again that he is a flat out authoritarian. He thinks he's a dictator, right? He really does believe that he has unilateral power to force vaccinations on people, right? He doesn't really care about whether it's constitutional. He doesn't really care about legislating. He don't care about any of that stuff, right? He wants what he wants. So again, this is something to keep an eye on, but it ain't really looking all too good for Biden's vaccine mandate at this point. And I do believe that if he fights too hard against this, considering that, he has opposition from the judicial system and from legislators at this point, I believe it's going to be a really bad look for him, and it's really going to make him start to look like a flat-out dictator, the thing that they call Trump. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.